I believe Larry Bird is the third greatest player to ever pick up a basketball, and odds are, you probably don't. But in the next 10 minutes, my goal is to convince you why you're wrong. And as a bonus, I'm going to be giving away a Larry Bird jersey to the first person to correctly comment the number of bird puns I use in this video, because you know what they say, the early bird gets the worm. Let's do this. So to me, the case for Larry Bird is really pretty simple. It's the fact that the peak of his career was as good as anybody we've ever seen. And yeah, that includes LeBron James and Michael Jordan. So just to kind of start things off, I want to give a bird's eye view of Larry's time in Boston. Because in the first 9 years to hatch his career, Bird was a top 4 MVP finisher every single year, including as a rookie. He averaged an absurd 25, 10, and 6, along with 2 steals and a block. He was the only player in modern NBA history to this day to win back-to-back-to-back MVPs. And get this, he ends his career as the second winningest player by win percentage ever, only trailing Magic Johnson, who we'll get to in a sec. And that last point's important because there's nothing that summarizes Bird's impact on the game more than just his impact on winning. In fact, the season before Bird got to Boston, they went 29-53. As a rookie, Bird comes to town, they immediately win 61 games. They then, for the rest of the decade, rattle off 62 wins, 63 wins, 56, 62, 63, 67, 59, 57. If that's not dominating an era, then I don't know what is. So I'm going to keep talking about the accolades and the playoff success in the next section, but I quickly want to touch on the other key part of my argument for Bird. And it's the fact that the guy was probably the perfect basketball player. Think about it. Bird was a 6'9" wing that could handle and was one of the greatest scorers we've ever seen. He could score at all 3 levels. Obviously, he was one of the first great 3-point shooters in the NBA. He had mid-range, he could attack the rim, he could also post your ass up too. Unbelievably clutch player. He is a top 10 passer in NBA history. He had serious eagle eyes for the entire court. I mean, he was a double-digit rebounder. He was an all-league defensive player, including finishing 3rd in DPOY in 1983. And perhaps his best skill was his basketball IQ and feel for the game. And the proof of that is that even after he retired on the court, he went on to win a Coach of the Year and an Executive of the Year with the Pacers. I mean, there was just nothing Larry Bird couldn't do as a basketball player, and you can't say that about any other player in NBA history. So at the beginning of the video, I kind of teased Bird being one of the greatest winners in NBA history, and that is absolute facts. And I think I could just sit here and say he was a 3-time champ, 2-time finals MVP in the toughest era the NBA has ever seen, and that would be good enough to kind of prove my point. But I want to go through and give some actual examples, starting with Bird's rookie year. So in the playoffs as a rookie, in the first round, he played Moses Malone's Houston Rockets, swept them. Closed them out with a light 34, 10, and 7 in Game 4. The Celtics then lost to prime Dr. J's 76ers in the second round, but for that series, Bird still averaged 22, 14, and 3. And then guess what? The next season, they win the championship, beat Moses Rockets again, and Bird had 27, 13, and 5 to close out the finals in Game 6. This is a second-year player we're talking about here. In 1982, I'll admit, the Celtics kind of laid an egg and lost to the 76ers in 7. But in that Game 7 loss, it's not like Bird laid an egg himself. He had 20, 11, 9, and 4. And the Game 7 resume is as impressive as anything I've ever found for any superstar ever. Check this out. In 7 Game 7s in the 1980s, Larry Bird averaged 29.1 points, 9.9 rebounds, and 7.1 assists. Also, 3.5 stocks, and he shot 48%, 44%, 95%. I mean, what are we even talking about here? Those are in Game 7s. If we expand that to 24 elimination games in his playoff career, he averaged 23 points, 11 rebounds, and 6 assists. Bird is one of the clutchest big game shower-uppers that we've ever seen, maybe in sports. And then let me keep going. From 1984 onwards, the Celtics went championship, lost in the finals, championship, lost in the finals. sounds kind of like LeBron James in Miami. So going back even to my last section, if we're talking peak for peak, Bird's up there with anybody, man. And think about it this way too. The Eastern Conference during this time was an absolute gauntlet because not only did you have Bird Celtics, but you had the bad boy Pistons were coming. I mean, you had Dr. J, Moses Malone and the 76ers. You had Michael Jordan and a young Chicago Bulls. Dude, you even had the Milwaukee Bucks with Sidney Moncrief. They had some good teams in this era. The Eastern Conference in the mid-'80s was an absolute gauntlet. And Larry Bird and the Celtics, I mean, they turned it into chicken pot pie. Now look, I've been hyping up Bird a lot, but I'm again not arguing that Bird is the GOAT. I still think Jordan and LeBron are in their own tier, and it's admittedly kind of hard to compare Larry Bird to the greatest big men ever, like a Bill Russell or a Tim Duncan or a Shaq or a Kareem. So what I want to do in this section is I want to kill 3 birds with 1 stone, and those 3 birds are the other top 10 caliber all-time guards and forwards. Steph Curry, Kobe Bryant, and Magic Johnson, Larry's biggest rival. So starting with Magic, because the Magic debate really just comes down to career versus peak. Because if you look at starting with their Rookie of the Year campaigns, I mean, Bird won 63 of 66 first place votes to swoop in and win Rookie of the Year. It wasn't close. Bird was a first team All-NBA guy that year. Magic did not make an All-NBA team. Again, Magic, good player as a rookie, but Bird was a level above. Bird finished higher in MVP voting every single year they played in the NBA until 1987 when Magic won it, and then Bird's body basically started breaking down. So again, when they were both healthy at their peak, Bird was the better player. Now Magic, of course, went 2-1 versus Bird in the finals, but number one, as I mentioned earlier, Bird faced much harder comp in the East than Magic ever did in the West. And Magic also had better teammates. And this is no disrespect to Robert Parrish and Dennis Johnson and Kevin McHale, unbelievable Hall of Fame guys. But those 3 aren't exactly Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You could argue those 3 weren't even late 80s James Worthy. So look, we're kind of, splitting feathers here, but I have Magic ranked 1 spot behind Bird all time because I think the historical MVP records prove that Bird was the better player. And that's also kind of just the argument for Bird over Steph and Kobe. As I kind of talked about in that second section, Bird just was the better all-around basketball player, and I think the proof of that compared to Kobe and Steph, not to mention Bird still has the playoff accolades too, but it's the fact that Bird has as many MVPs as those 2 guys do combined. Now, perhaps the most important conversation about Bird's career, the birds and the bees, if you will, is Larry's impact on the NBA. Because when him and Magic entered the NBA in 1979, I mean, the NBA was like a cold turkey league. It was almost dead. Drug abuse, poor ratings, playoff games on tape delay. In just so many ways, the NBA was lacking. And Bird and Magic really saved the NBA's popularity. So for that alone, Larry will always be Larry Legend. But also beyond that, there are just so many other little anecdotal, impactful pieces of the game that we now love that Larry had his hands on. Whether that's him being the first ever star to embrace shooting threes. In fact, he won the first 3 3-point contests ever at All-Star Weekend. The all-lefty game when he dropped the 47-point triple-double for fun. Iconic. And even how about this? A lot of NBA players will tell you that Larry Bird is the trash-talking GOAT. Like the way he would egg on his opponents and chirp them to death is just absolutely legendary. Now look, I'll take a step back for a moment and be real, because I think a big reason why people sleep on Bird and don't have him as a top 3 player ever is because he just doesn't have the longevity of other guys. And the main reason for that is because he got hurt. He had back issues. So when you stack him up next to these guys like LeBron and Kareem and probably Steph and even Jordan, he just doesn't have the counting stats or the overall accolades that these other guys have. I want to end this video with a few quotes from other NBA legends that I think sum up Larry Bird, because at this point I've just done too much talking. Starting with Pat Riley, who was the head coach of the Showtime Lakers. Pat Riley once said that, quote, "If I had to take one guy to take the last shot to win a game, I would take Michael Jordan. But if I needed a guy to take the last shot to save my life, give me Larry Bird." Speaking of Michael Jordan, when Larry retired, Jordan said this, quote, "Larry, I hear that you're retiring. Thank goodness. I'm glad. I'm tired of seeing your face." Now, yeah, if you know anything about Michael Jordan, you know that's about as much respect as MJ is ever going to be able to give. And finally, from Magic Johnson himself at Larry Bird's retirement ceremony in Boston, Larry's biggest rival ever said this.
Larry Bird said that there would be another Larry Bird one day. And Larry, there will never, ever, ever be another Larry Bird. To the greatest basketball player ever, but more important, a friend forever.
So hey, if you disagree, I guess I'll just flip you the bird. Thanks for watching.